This is how to be as fat as possible. To gain as much visceral fat, to gain as much abdominal fat. It's essentially what not to do. It's things that I did when I was close to 300 pounds, and some of the things I knew that I was doing were wrong. But some of the things I just didn't even know. So warning, this is satire. But if you want to get as fat as possible and be as metabolically unhealthy as possible, do these 18 things. Number 1, your plate always should be a big pile of refined carbs and oils. Industrialized seed oils to be specific. Now, I'm not saying that seed oils are going to magically make you fat, but I am going to say that they're refined and it's easy to ingest a high amount of calories from them. So it makes sense if you're trying to get as fat as possible that you should be prioritizing the refined carbs and the oils. And maybe your plate has a little bit of protein on it, but that protein should almost be like beans and rice combined to make a protein. Because even though you can tell yourself that that's a protein, it's probably going to fill you up with so much more in the way of carbs and fats and calories that you'll overeat and you'll probably gain some fat. The second thing that you want to do if you want to gain a lot of weight and you want to wreck your metabolism is, well, you want to make sure that any little bit of activity that you do, even if it's a 30-calorie walk around the block, is fueled by a surplus of food. Because you're going to be active, you should always be eating, right? So if you go to the gym, you're trying to do something good for you, if you want to make sure that you offset the effect of that workout to make sure you don't lose weight and you continue to gain weight, you should probably eat a lot of carbs, eat a lot of fuel to fuel that workout to make sure you don't lose any weight. In fact, you gain weight. A 30-calorie walk around the block, well, that might warrant 50 calories of consumption. The third thing you need to do is you need to always let every other priority and stressor become the real priority in your life. Like step 1 almost should be this, is you need to deprioritize health. Okay, you need to make sure that you solve all your work problems first, that you solve all your friends' problems before you ever focus on yourself. Because what that can do for you is it can make it so that you don't focus on yourself and then everything else just kind of goes into a time warp. And before you know it, you're gaining weight. The next thing, the fourth thing that you need to be doing is you need to be getting all of your protein from carbs and fats. Similar to the first one, but your protein almost needs to be coming from plants in a way. You really need to make sure that you're not getting the meat and that you're getting the complete proteins that come from plants. Because what can happen with that, and what does happen, is you don't get the full satiety, so you want to eat more. But you don't just get your protein, you get other macronutrients too. You're getting a lot of carbs, you're getting possibly some fats, and next thing you know, something that would ordinarily give you 100 calories and a fair bit of protein, you're getting 200, 300 calories for that same amount of protein. I mean, it's the perfect crime if you're trying to gain weight. The fifth thing you want to do is whenever you feel tired, you consume caffeine. Because your body is telling you you need caffeine when you're tired, right? So you add more caffeine to override hormones and override signals that you need to relax, and you put yourself into this stressful state. And this stressful state might be very well what you need to stress your body into gaining more weight. The sixth one is similar. You need to make sure that you prioritize getting those emails done and prioritize all other things above your sleep. Because if you sleep, that's less time that you're able to focus on things that matter, and it's more time that your body's going to be able to run efficiently. And if your body's running efficiently, your hormones, your systems and processes, your metabolic machinery is operating well. And you want that to be an inefficient process so that your body tends to store more rather than utilize it properly. So prioritizing everything else above sleep, let sleep become a back burner. You don't really need it. The seventh thing is that you should probably convince yourself that anytime you do cardio at all, whether it's a walk or a run or a bike ride, that you're going to burn up muscle. Because if you convince yourself that, then you won't do it. And if you don't do it, then you're very likely to put on weight. And it's not to say that if you avoid cardio altogether that you're magically going to gain weight, but it's a great way to double check and possibly ensure a little bit more that you gain as much fat as possible. The eighth thing is you never, ever, ever let yourself be hungry. The second that you're hungry, that means that your body is starting to rip away some of those fat stores. And that's not what you want when you're trying to put as much fat on your body as possible. So when you do this, you're just completely sabotaging yourself. You should always have a steady stream of fuel. It makes sense, right? I mean, it's actually what we're told. So it makes sense. We're told it all the time. So it probably is right that you should never feel hunger, because that's only what starving people feel. And you're not starving. So don't feel hunger. Hunger is your sign of telling you you absolutely need to eat and something is terribly wrong. So keep a steady stream of nutrients. You should actually be kind of full all the time. I want to pause for a second and make sure people remember this is satire. You should essentially be doing the opposite of this if you actually want to lose weight, right? This is just a quick reminder, because it's easy when you're doing satire to start going down this road of saying, wait a minute, what exactly am I doing? Now, the next thing that you should absolutely do if you're trying to put on fat is rampantly consume carbs and fats together. You see, what this is going to do is it's actually a cool trick for your brain, because carbs highlight one area of the brain and fats light up another area of the brain. And this gets you ultra excited over this food and actually allows you to eat more without even knowing it. So then you eat more, but it doesn't feel like you're eating more. So you put on fat a lot easier. So it can get you to your goals a lot faster. Now, if you wanted to lose weight, of course, you'd reverse that. You'd probably want to separate them. You probably want to eat whole foods, things like that. The next thing that you definitely have to do is you need to fear. And you should develop a healthy fear of any meat that has saturated fat. Because we know that saturated fat is just going to make you fat, right? Fat makes you fat, right? So if you eat a lot of fat calories, you gain fat. So when it comes down to meat, there's saturated fat in some meats. So you probably should be really weary of it. Here's where I really have to stop and be serious for a second. Lean protein, lean meat is the foundation. I personally feel that some lean meat, some veggies, a little bit of fruits is the foundation for a healthy life. If you avoid these things, I feel it just gets harder. But I don't want to stand on my pedestal. You do you. But lean protein is a priority. And let's pretend for a second you're trying to gain weight, but maybe not gain fat. Protein and lean protein should still be your priority. My favorite proteins are down below. I put a link for ButcherBox. They've been a sponsor on this channel for 6-7 years now. Okay, it is grass-fed, grass-finished beef. It's delivered to your doorstep, and you get the finest cuts and the highest quality beef that you could probably try. It is amazing. But they don't just have beef. They also have chicken, they have cod, they have scallops, you name it. Okay, they even have all beef hot dogs and all that. So that link down below is a special link that even shares some of the types of meats that I would get, the specific cuts that I choose, and even cuts that I chose while I was continuing my transformation. So that link down below is in the top line of the description underneath this video. Again, it's for ButcherBox. The meat gets delivered right to your doorstep. You won't regret it. Seriously, when it comes down to it, it's just the taste that matters the most for people. And their ground beef, their ground bison, it tastes unlike anything you've probably ever had. So a big thank you to ButcherBox, and a thank you to you for supporting them and trying them, because that's what keeps this channel going as well. So link down below. The next one, really, really, really important that you ignore any kind of thirst or hydration things. Okay, water is just gonna fill you up. There's actually a thermic effect. When you consume water, your body actually has a digestive and even an osmotic effect of absorbing the water that burns calories. It can burn a lot of calories, believe it or not. There's some evidence that suggests it can, drinking a liter of water can actually burn a fair bit of calories. That's the last thing you want if you're trying to put on fat. Plus, you don't want to send a signal to your body that you have fuel by filling up your stomach. If you drink water, sometimes the brain might say, oh, I'm kind of satiated, don't eat. And the last thing you want to do if you're trying to gain fat is not eat. Number 12, you should probably get most of your nutrition from juices or greens powders, because even if people are trying to lose weight, these things are great because they can give you some vitamins and minerals if you need it. But when you're trying to gain weight, you really want to focus on these, because the last thing that you want is some fiber or the actual food matrix. So food in its whole form is able to send signals and has bioactive peptides in meats and things like that. Point is when you eat food in its whole food form, it does something unique to the body where you actually get more satiated, particularly when you're looking at vegetables and fruits that have fiber in them. So if you juice them or you just use powdered forms of them, you override that satiety, you override the satiation aspect, and you can actually just get the nutrition in, but never feel satisfied, so then you can go eat more. The 13th thing you need to do is you should probably roll out of bed and just have a light breakfast. Because having a light breakfast is going to almost ensure that you're hungry later in the day. So if you're hungry later in the day, usually when you're exhausted and you don't have a lot of willpower, it's a great time to overeat. So if you roll out of bed, you have a granola bar because you're just in a hurry, you're prioritizing everything else in your life as you should, other than your health, you have that granola bar. Yeah, perfect. You get yourself a little bit of refined sugar, a little bit of refined starch, then you can go throughout the rest of the day ravenous and getting increasingly ravenous. Also, while the compounding effects of stress from the life are getting worse and worse and worse. So by the time 5 p.m. rolls around, you are highly likely to make a decision that is hugely caloric. Like the chances of you indulging in something that's going to put a lot of fat on you is super high. So it almost subconsciously guarantees that you're going to eat more later in the day. So have a light breakfast, just a little something that kind of whets your appetite to make you hungrier later. Number 14, this is kind of a hard one for some people, but you probably want to stay indoors as much as possible. Like sunlight, photobiomodulation, like you hear the biohacking, those health nuts kind of talk about it. It does things, right? It does things to your mitochondria, it does things to your body. Sometimes it staves off hunger. Sometimes it makes you want to be more active. It could even be beneficial hormonally, which you really want to crash all this if you're trying to get as fat as possible. So you stay inside, reduce the vitamin D, reduce the sunlight. If you do go outside, cover up and don't get the sun. Number 15, you want to stay in toxic relationships and have toxic friendships as much as you can. Because what's going to happen is that's going to encourage you to find comfort in what you need. And in this particular case, the comfort that you need is going to be food, right? So toxic relationships, toxic friendships, you may not be getting the validation that you seek. You may not be getting the actual connection that you're seeking. So you start to find that connection internally through food. But this is a great way because the codependency that you can develop with food can make it so that you want to eat more based on every emotion. And it never becomes something that's sidebarred. It's just flat out, that is your focus. So if you want to gain weight, it needs to be your focus of your life. And you need to make sure that food is everything that you work for. I have to stop again and make sure people remember this is satire. I don't want the YouTube gods to come in and be like, oh, this is terrible advice. It's satire. Okay, there's a purpose for it. Number 16, if you drink your calories, you can bypass the GLP-1 receptor agonist kind of effect. So you can bypass glucagon-like peptide 1, you can bypass these biopeptides, you can bypass all these gut incretins that would normally tell your brain to stop eating. So if you eat, the rate at which you eat, all this can affect that. When you drink your calories, like milkshakes, lots of smoothies with lots of calories in them, you can actually bypass. It's kind of a quick hack to override that system so you can ingest more calories before your brain says stop. Number 17, you should probably just eat lots of margarine. The thing with margarine is that it's very high in trans fats. So trans fats, in this particular case, can be a very good way to build visceral fat. Visceral fat, it might not help you be as, quote, fat as possible, but it might help you build more of the metabolically unhealthy fat. So that's really that's a low-key kind of trick for people that are trying to get even more unhealthy. Number 18, the very last one in this case, is alcohol. You got to add alcohol to the equation because alcohol is 7 calories per gram. So you get a lot of calories from alcohol, but there's a lot of literature that actually suggests if you drink alcohol, you will probably eat more while intoxicated. So it's a way for you to cheat the system, consume more calories and not even realize it. And you wake up the next day and you're like, hey, another pound on me. It's actually working. So to wrap this all up full circle, these are the kinds of mistakes that I made when I was overweight. I did these things. It's like I lived this life on purpose. Now knowing what I know now, I look at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's almost comical, but it's also not. Because I know that so many people continue to live their life like this because they just haven't seen the light of how they might need to reframe how they look at their lives. Anyway, as always, keep it locked here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.